Ted Bundy, also known as Theodore Robert Cowell, was born in Burlington, Vermont on November 24th in 1946. He was born to Louise Cowell, however, he was actually raised under the deception of believing that his grandparents were his real parents. He was told that his mother was his sister, and this revelation later in life deeply affected him. Ted Bundy had murdered over 40 plus women between the years of 1974 to 1978. He is known to be one of the most notorious serial killers in all of history globally, but specifically in the United States of America. There are a few things that I want to address before we get into it. First, I have a different background than usual. My usual one is over there, but I have been in excruciating pain for, well, my whole life really, but this whole past week has really been bad. I don't really think I've ever talked about this. I have a rotated hip, so yeah, if you want to know what that means, go look it up, but it hurts and it kills me all the time. Every single day of my life, I am in pain. So, I did not record 3 videos last week. Instead, I only did 2. I do apologize for that. Usually, I upload 3, but I physically could not sit down and edit or do much of anything, really. In the future, if I do cancel a video, it is probably because my hip is killing me, or my back, or a joint on my right side. Something on my right side is usually killing me, so please do consider subscribing to my channel. That would really be great. I'm trying to hit 600 before the end of February. We're gonna get right into the Ted Bundy case. Between the years of 1950 to 1951, Ted had moved to Tacoma, Washington with Louise, his mother/sister. Louise later marries Johnny Culpepper Bundy, and then Ted takes the Bundy surname. His relationship with his stepfather is deeply strained. In the early 1960s, Ted had displayed early behavioral issues such as theft, voyeurism, obsession with crime fiction, and possible animal cruelty. We saw that behavior in the one and the only Jeffrey Dahmer as well. That seems to be a consistent when it comes to serial killers. Between the years of 1965 to 1966, he attended the University of Puget Sound briefly. I may have butchered that. My fault. He had transferred to the University of Washington. He had begun a relationship with Liz Kendall, who had become a later incredibly important role in Bundy's capture. In 1969, he had volunteered for the Seattle Crime Prevention Advisory Commission. Ironic, he had worked on Republican campaigns, specifically Governor Daniel J. Evans. He projects a clean-cut, intelligent image. This is one thing that was very, very interesting about Ted was he was a seemingly attractive, kind, intelligent man who, murdered women on the side. His first confirmed murder was Linda Ann Healy. She was age 21, and she was abducted from her basement bedroom in Seattle, widely considered Bundy's very first confirmed murder. I am going to name off all of his victims, or all confirmed victims, because if you're not aware, we actually don't know how many people Ted actually killed. The number could be much higher. They suspect it's actually in the 100s. Between January to June 1974, he had murdered multiple young women in Washington and Oregon. His victims included Donna Gail Manson, Suzanne Rancourt, Roberta Kathleen Parks, Brenda Carroll Bell, and Georgianne Hawkins. He enjoyed, he would often fake having a injury. So he would have a cast on his arm, and he would lure women and just try to get their help, and then he would kill them. He would abduct women in public places. Sexual assault, murder, and necrophilia were Ted's big ones. His dump sites were often in wooded areas, and he did often revisit these dump sites. These were known Bundy dump sites after the investigation had happened. Things escalate in Utah, Colorado, and Idaho. Between the months of September to October 1974 in Utah, the women that he murdered included Nancy Wilcox, Melissa Smith, and Laura Amy. On October 18, 1974, he was arrested in Utah for kidnapping Carol DeRonk. She had survived and later identified him in his capture. In March of 1975, he was convicted of kidnapping her, and he was sentenced to 1 to 15 years in Utah State Prison. Mind you, he was in a relationship during all this. Liz Kendall, The Phantom Prince, I did read that. I loved it. I made my grandma read it, and it was such a heartbreaking story. And I think if you're into true crime, you should read The Phantom Prince by Liz Kendall. Anyway, he, Ted, had escaped jail multiple times. His first escape was on June 7th, 1977. He had escaped from Pitkin County Courthouse in Aspen, Colorado, and he was recaptured on June 13th, 1977. His second escape was only a few months later, on December 30th, 1977. He escapes Glenwood Springs Jail, and he flees to Florida, and this is where the famous Chi Omega sorority murders happened at Florida State University. Is it Chi? Is it Chi Omega? I'm not a sorority girl. Okay, I wouldn't know. He had murdered Margaret Bowman and Lisa Levy. These are famous names in his case. Several assaults included Karen Chandler and Kathy Kleiner. On February 9th, 1978, he had kidnapped and murdered Kimberly Leach, who was 12 years old, and this was his youngest confirmed victim. The Kimberly Leach killing was the one that would do it in for him. He was arrested in Pensacola, Florida after suspicious behavior and assault attempt. In 1979 to 1980, he had gone through 3 Florida trials. He was convicted of the Chi Omega murders, and he was convicted of Kimberly Leach's murder. He would receive 3 death sentences. 3. You know what pisses me off about our court system? Okay. Is the fact that we, instead of just, killing somebody, actually give them a bunch of death sentences and a bunch of life sentences. And I think that's really stupid. Because you have a man like Ted Bundy who, murdered and raped a 12-year-old girl and put him on 3 death sentences. Just kill him! Just kill him! Eileen Wuornos, too, that's another one. Just kill him. Okay. Like, shit. Between 1980 to 1989, he was on Florida death row. He would give partial confessions to investigators shortly before execution. He would admit to 30 murders, although the number is believed to be a lot more than that, as I just said. However, back then it was believed to be more like 35 to 45. On January 23rd in 1989, he was executed by the electric chair at Florida State Prison. His last words were, "Nothing." He had a statement read by attorney. In summary, his active killing years were between the years of 1974 to 1978. However, he was incredibly sketchy before that. His confirmed victims were 30, however, like the total victims, 45 plus. 45 plus. He would murder in states of Washington, Oregon, Utah, Idaho, California, and Florida. I want to go more into detail about the Liz and Ted relationship because that is the most interesting part of the entire case, in my opinion. He had met Liz in Seattle at a bar in 1969. Liz, at the time, or Liz is a single mother to a young daughter named Molly. Ted was attentive and charming and just a kind man, took care of Molly. Liz had left them alone a lot of the time. He was really perfect, honestly. He had stepped into a familial role, almost like a father figure to Molly. Cooking, attending events, stuff like that. The dynamic early on was Liz was insecure and had struggled with alcohol quite a bit. Ted had early on positioned himself as the stable one. He oscillated between affection towards Liz and Molly and then just withdrawal, emotional withdrawal, which would make her work harder to please him. Ted had avoided commitment, refused to marry her, even after several years of dating. However, he did still rely on her financially and emotionally. The push and pull pattern that continues between them goes on for many years to come, pretty much from the start to the end of Ted's case, it was push and pull, push and pull, push and pull, till the day he was convicted, which had to be so emotionally taxing on her especially. I don't give a fuck about Ted. Liz, the emotional warfare that she had to be under, it makes me really sad. I compare this story to stories like the BTK killer's family and Lionel Dahmer. One day I am going to do a video on Lionel Dahmer and Jeffrey Dahmer because their relationship is so interesting to me. I read a father's story back in October. The place that I hold for Lionel Dahmer in my heart, okay? I feel so, it makes me sick what he went through. As the murders had begun in 1974, Liz had noticed disturbing changes in her boyfriend. Ted would become secretive, emotionally cold, absent, a lot of the time. He was defensive about his whereabouts. He would drink more and he would grow more abusive and cruel during arguments. He would belittle Liz, mock her concerns, and would imply that she's paranoid or unstable. The big red flags that Liz noticed would be that Ted had owned multiple items later that would be linked to abductions, such as crowbars and ropes and ski masks and shit like that. He would disappear for days on end. He matched several police sketches and descriptions, and obviously, you know, he was the guy. His name, Ted, and a tan Volkswagen were publicly associated with the crimes. So, these all raised major red flags to Liz. In 1974, Liz reported Ted to the police, and that's why I opened this video with Liz was a important figure in capturing Ted, because she was one of the reasons why they even looked at him in the first place. Liz reported Ted to police multiple times, not just once. She would report his name, his Volkswagen Beetle, his behavior, and his resemblance to the suspect sketch. It didn't lead to arrest immediately, and that would be because Bundy at the time had no criminal record. He passed polygraphs, he seemed too clean-cut. He was a conservative, he was a white male, he was straight, you know, it was that kind of stuff back then. Police bias had worked in his favor, etc., etc. Ted had later figured out that Liz had reported him and would go on to psychologically punish her for it. Between the years of 74 to 75, the psychological abuse would escalate between Ted and Liz. After his arrest in Utah in 1974 and his conviction in 1975, Ted would alternate between crying and begging and playing victim, and between cold rage and silent treatment, so one or the other. He would blame Liz for his legal troubles and then without outright accusing her of them. He would manipulate Liz into testifying in his favor. He would keep her emotionally tethered along while he was pursuing other women and killing other women and other women. Liz later had described feeling confused, constantly guilty for doubting him, and both terrified of being wrong or right, which, you know, that makes sense. Scared of being right in the way you don't want your long-term boyfriend to be a serial killer, and then wrong in the way that you don't want to think of your boyfriend as a long-term serial killer, or because that would just prove that she doesn't trust him. In the mid to late 1970s, their romantic relationship would end, but Ted would never fully let her go. He would continue contacting her from jail. He would hint at suicide or despair to keep her engaged, and this is something very, very common in narcissism. With narcissists is they will threaten to kill themselves so that you don't leave. Even after his Florida murders and the eventual conviction, Liz had struggled emotionally with guilt and shame and fear she should have known sooner. I also do think that when you contact the police for something like that, for maybe someone in your life being a suspect for an awful thing, a part of you doesn't want to believe it. And I know she talked about going through that, where she did not want to. She almost felt guilty for like putting him out there, putting him towards the police, because she didn't want to believe that it was him. And she felt guilty for the fact that he was the one that was convicted. Maybe the actual guy was out there somewhere, but we know it's him. between DNA and sperm at the scene and stuff like that. But it's still a war that goes on inside of you. Post 1989 execution, Liz would go on to speak out to the press. She changed her name and lives privately for years. We don't know where she is today. Eventually, in these years, that would go on to be the Phantom Prince years, with her entitled The Phantom Prince: My Life with Ted Bundy. That's what her book is called. Liz would be deeply self-critical and would never excuse him, of course. She would describe Bundy as sadistic and emotionally empty, capable of convincing people they were the problem, and one of her most chilling realizations was that the man that she had believed she had known never existed. That is a hard thing to wage with, okay? That is a hard thing to live with. Their story is so interesting and important to me because he was hiding in plain sight. He was working and he had a girlfriend. And he was doing all of this in plain sight. He was abducting women in plain sight. He removed the passenger seat of his car. It's in a museum today. I forget which one. One day I'm gonna go. And so his Volkswagen Beetle was there, and he removed the passenger seat from his car so that he could murder women easier. In plain sight. And, like, he didn't even hide it. It's so sick. It's so sick. This case and Ted Bundy and everything he did, like, lives in my head. I think about it a lot, okay? I know it's not healthy. I think about this case a lot. I think about Jeffrey Dahmer a lot as well. After Liz and Bundy had broken up, Bundy would go on to date and then later on marry in jail Carol Ann Boone, and they do have a kid together, a little girl. Well, she's not so little anymore. But so Bundy does have a kid out there in the world. Terrifying. Not terrifying that the kid is alive, terrifying that Ted Bundy has a kid, okay? That's all I'm saying here. The story of Ted Bundy is so interesting to me here. 1 second. Okay, I'm gonna talk about a little bit more about, like, me and my relationship with, true crime. The Ted Bundy case has been in my life since I was 12. I have known of Ted Bundy and I've known of the logistics of his case for a very, very long time. I watched the Ted Bundy tapes so many times. I don't even really want to admit it, but I watched them very many times when I was in middle school. I was very fascinated. And obviously, I have the book, The Ted Bundy Conversations with the Killer. And in my junior year of high school, I hated school. Okay, I fucking hated school. I would spend my time just analyzing this. I mean, I had coded. You see, I had color code. Oh, I had color coded my pens and my markers so that I could go through and highlight and sticky note and understand this case literally and study it, literally study his words and him in his mind until I knew everything about him. I was 16, 17. I was 17 when I did this, I think, so 3 years ago now. I never finished. I want to. I'm gonna finish this, and I'm gonna finish it this year. That's one of my New Year's resolutions. There is a line in here, there is a section in here where when he's in jail, Ted forces two minors, not forces, but he has two minors striptease for him. It's fucking sick, man. It is so sick. I know, like, being interested in the Ted Bundy case, that isn't, like, a new thing, okay? Ted Bundy is one of the most notorious serial killers in history, but It boggles my mind because I look at it like I look at it between the tropes of that time, and the culture of that time of the 1970s and the 1980s and the 1990s and the 50s and the 60s, and Jeffrey Dahmer and Ed Gein and Eileen Wuornos and all these big serial killers. You compare it to today. You compare it to the 2000s and the 2010s and the 2020s. There is no way that we don't have people like that happening and doing things right now. My mind is going way too fast right now. It's what happens about something I'm passionate about. Um, but it's such an interesting thing to think about because you know Ted Bundy, you know the names of Jeffrey Dahmer and all of them, but then you look at it and you're like, these people like could be my neighbor, a family member. I don't know. I have gotten I'm so alert of my surroundings ever since I've been a true crime fan since I was old enough to talk. Is it healthy? No, but my fixation on it, it's never gonna go away. I have tried to stop. I can't. I know of the debate when it comes to true crime and like thinking it's weird to be obsessed with serial killers and just wanting to let it rest. But I also think, yes, okay, I agree. However, I do think it's important to talk about these cases because they are tied into our pop culture and just our lives in general. The Epstein files that were just released, we're gonna talk about those forever, but we're not allowed to talk about Ted Bundy or Jeffrey Dahmer. These cases are so interesting because they're so few and far between. Like these people, it takes an insane mind to be able to kill people, multiple people, plan it out. The BTK killer would literally plan his murders around his kids' schedules, his family schedules. I did a video on the BTK. I don't think I talked about how much that man scares me. It takes a different mind, and it's not a mindset I ever want to even step foot into or near. One thing I will say as a true crime YouTuber slash horror YouTuber, whatever, um, I don't think that people should make money off of true crime. I have said this before, and I had a few people be like, "What? You're a true crime YouTuber?" I am gonna do everything in my power. When I get paid for a true crime video, I am not keeping that money. I am not keeping that money. I am donating it to a sexual abuse survivor hotline. I am not, that money is not for me, okay? The money I make from true crime videos in the future, that's not my money. That's not money that I want. It would feel like dirty money, okay? I want that to go to people who in charities that have been personally affected by this. I've never been personally affected by a serial killer. I'm just interested. I'm a criminology student. My whole life is gonna revolve around this. I am simply like an outsider, okay? I've never experienced sexual abuse or anything like this, anything like what these victims have experienced. I want that money to go to people who need it. I don't want to be like completely honest about the length and the depth of my fixation, my obsession. I keep this book, the Wikipedia Encyclopedia of Killers. I keep it on my desk because this is where I work. I have a true crime channel. It's just that true crime and like Ted Bundy and all of this stuff has been with me for so long. And I get why people think it's weird to be into true crime, okay? Like, I completely understand it. But is that ever going to deter me from it? No. I have been looking for an ethical true crime channel. One that doesn't do their makeup. Okay, one that doesn't do their makeup while they're talking about serial killers. Somebody that will sit down and just talk. Talk about what happened. Bring light to the survivors and the victims and the people who have died. The families. I think that's necessary. I think that talking about these crimes is important. I don't think that we should let these cases die. I don't think that that's smart because when we forget history, we're doomed to repeat it. And this is our history. All of this is our history. Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, BTK, Eileen Wuornos, Ed Gein, John Wayne Gacy, Charles Manson. That is our history as Americans and just people. I've been talking for so long. Now, I have been asked a few times if I was going to make a video on Epstein and the recent files. I doubt it. I doubt it because that is not a hole I want to dig. That is a hole that I dig into in my own personal time. But as far as bringing that onto my YouTube channel, I don't want to talk about it because it's very political. I try to keep politics out of my YouTube. I talk about it a little bit on my Instagram. But on my YouTube, I don't want to get into Epstein and Israel and Trump and Bill Clinton. That's not the energy that I want to bring into my channel. But also the details that have emerged in these cases, specifically around children, I don't think I'm going to be able to talk about. I am talking about it on my Instagram and stuff, but as far as making a full video, a full scripted, write down, research, go through the Epstein Files video, like, I don't think that mentally I can take that. Maybe I'll go through, I have been doing some research on Ghislaine Maxwell, and the Reddit account. What I will not do is I will not make a full-scale video about the files and about the people in them because I don't want to. Straight up, I don't want to. Okay? Well, this turned into a big old yap fest, but it is my channel. That is what we do here, so. Thank you for being here. If you're still here, I am very, very happy about that. Comment, like, subscribe, all the usual YouTuber bullshit, and I will see you on Thursday and Saturday at 1 o'clock.